Hi, Assalamualaikum guys. Hope you are well, hope you are healthy. So here we are again today. This is my second video as I promised you. In this video, I'll talk to you a bit more about my career so far. So alright, let me kick it off by sharing very briefly the jobs and the role I've done so far. So as you know, I graduated as an engineer. So my first job was with Lufthansa. It was an MRO facility, maintenance, repair and overhaul facility. I was a process engineer at Lufthansa at that time. I only did about a bit above a year with Lufthansa before I move on to FedEx, Federal Express. So in FedEx, I actually moved into a non-technical role where I was in the strategy and planning team. So I spent almost 2.5 years in FedEx where I was working. I was based in Malaysia, but I was covering the South Pacific region. It requires me to travel quite a bit to Hong Kong, Philippines and Thailand. And from there, I joined Shell. And I've been with Shell for 9 years now. I've done a number of roles in Shell, and that's what I want to focus today, my career in Shell. So I'll try to explain to you guys via 4 segments here. The first one is really telling you very briefly about the industry, what is oil and gas industry. Secondly, I'll tell you about the roles available in the oil and gas industry. Thirdly, I'll share with you about my roles, the roles I've done so far in Shell. And the last one will be my reflection or my advices to all of you, right? Hoping that it will benefit you. So, in a very simplistic way, there are a few segments of the oil and gas industry. The first one being the upstream segment, the second one being the midstream, middle stream, and the last one, the downstream. So let me tell you a bit about each of these 3 segments here of the business. So an upstream industry is really where you try to explore and try to recover hydrocarbons, right? Whether it's oil or whether it's gas. So that involves the surveying, whether it's onshore or offshore at sea, right? And it also involves developing that particular area that you found, that you believe that has the resources, developing that area and extracting the resources out of the earth, right? So that is the upstream bit. Now, the middle stream is really where you take the natural resources, again, whether it's oil or gas, you process them, right? This is where you have the refinery. For gas, you really process it to be a liquefied natural gas so that you can export it, right? So that is essentially middle stream. The last one is really downstream. So at the end of the day, the product that you extracted from the earth, right, you obviously need to find the users, the consumers for it, right? So this is the downstream part. It involves retail stations, for example. It can be business to customers, they call it B2C. It can also be business to business, selling these products, whether it's gas, whether it's fuel, diesel, kerosene, bitumen, all of these products being sold to the businesses out there who requires them. So obviously there's a lot more to it. I'm not going to be able to cover every single piece of them, but those are essentially the traditional business model of oil and gas company, yeah? So generally, in all the 3 segments I explained just now, from upstream to midstream to downstream, there are always a technical role as well as non-technical role. I'm not going to be able to cover the specifics of the different businesses or the different segments, but I'll just share very quickly, right? So technical roles are quite straightforward, quite easy to understand, I believe. These are the engineers, right? In upstream segments, these are the drilling engineers. These are the well engineers or the construction engineers to build the platform offshore, right, at the sea there. Those are very quick example. In midstream, the technical guys will be the guys who run the plant, who understand the process of processing the crude oil, right? So now, similarly, across the three segments of the businesses, you do have non-technical roles as well, right? Let me share with you a couple of quick examples of non-technical roles across upstream, midstream, as well as downstream. So for upstream, before you do have the platform being set up, before you do have the drilling, there are actually a lot of work behind that, right? So typically one upstream project is funded by multiple parties, right? It can be a private investor, it can also be a state government. For example, in Sarawak, you're drilling in Sarawak water, and Sarawak state government wanted to invest in there, and more often than not, you will also always have the national oil company. In our case, in Malaysia's case, Petronas is the national oil company, right? So when you have multiple stakeholders or people being involved in a joint venture or in a company, things are not always easy, because people will have their own different opinions, they have their own way of doing things. So the commercial guys really play a huge role in getting everyone on the same page, and it's not always easy, I tell you, you know. Sometimes I do feel it's a lot more complicated than dealing with technical matters. Now, similar to upstream, the commercial guys in midstream and downstream, they do pretty much the same thing, right? I'm not going to spend too much time elaborating, but the point I'm trying to make here is the nature of our commercial roles are pretty similar. Typically, you adjust it according to the complexity of the business. So now, what role have I done in Shell? So let me share a bit about that, yeah? So I started my career in downstream, specifically retail. When people say retail station, it's really all this petrol station that you see out there, right? So I was a territory manager where I manage an area. So I can share I was managing the petrol stations in Terengganu and a bit in Kelantan as well as Pahang. That was my first role in Shell. So when I say I manage the petrol station, it means I work alongside with the owners, right, or the retailers, we call it. So these are our partners. They are not really Shell staff, they're not Shell employees, but I have to make sure that the service they offer, the product that they offer, whether it's a diesel or gasoline, or whether it's the things that they're selling at the shop, they are all consistent, right? So that's my primary role and responsibility when I was in retail as territory manager. I then moved to a midstream business where I was first doing logistics. So in that business, we have a plant. It's the world's first gas to liquid plant at Bintulu, Sarawak. So the plant take the natural gas, they will process it and turn it into different products. There are three portfolios of products, right? So I manage the logistics for all these three different portfolios, and we are an export business. We sell less than 10% of our product in Malaysia. The rest are all exported out of Malaysia. Yeah. I then moved into a sales role where I was the head of one of the three main products, right? So the product is essentially a base chemical that is used for drilling, for the drillers, whether it's onshore or offshore. Right? I do need to also understand the technical side of the product as well as the technical side of the application, because when I was doing this role, I talked to the technical guys, I talked to the drilling engineers, I talked to the mud engineers, I talked to the wells engineers, right? if I'm not able to understand a bit of their language, then you're gonna have a communication breakdown and you're not gonna be able to understand their problem and offer a solution to it, right? The other role I did in Shell was in a business called Shell Energy Asia. It is essentially a gas and power business, right? So I was in the New Markets Asia team, where our mandate or our direction at that time was to develop a new businesses, a gas and power businesses across Asia. So I was responsible for developing a gas business in Malaysia. I was also involved in looking at the projects or supporting other projects in Japan and Philippines, right? But my focus was on Malaysia at that time. So after listening to my journey so far in Shell, you might think that I'm not actually using my engineering degree, but you are absolutely wrong, I can tell you that. Even though I'm not in the technical role, but that degree really makes things a lot easier for me, you know, because in whatever I do, there need to be some technical understanding, especially in the oil and gas industry, right? It helps to have that technical understanding so that you can talk to a different guy and the bridge or the wall between you and the technical guy is not too much. And this is where I wanna sum it up, right? Or close it out with my advices to you guys. So in career, upon reflection, what I would say is, remember to start at the right place. What do I mean by that? So when you start with a very established company, they most of the time will have a structured grooming or a very structured process of coaching you or helping you to learn. So that is the benefit. And at the same time, you meet a lot of experienced mentors, right? You meet a lot of bright minds, I tell you. And why mentors are important is because your learning, 70 to 80% really happens on the job. You know, the formal learning, the classroom learning really accounts maybe 10 to 20%. So that's why you really got to make use of these more experienced seniors or folks or mentors in the organization and extract the learning from them so that you can grow better and you can grow faster. And this is my second advice to you. Plan your career. Please plan your career, right? Have a long-term goal, but focus on the next 2-3 years. And if you recall, I said this in my first video, it is okay not to commit to do just one thing for the rest of your life, right? That's the benefit of going to a large organization, because there exists over there, they will have a different type of roles, you know, like I said, technical, non-technical. They also have the support functions, you know, the finance and the legal and so on and so forth. So when you work in this kind of organization, you get to move around, because sometimes, you know, we don't always want to stick to doing just one thing, right? And another advice is really, don't get too comfortable in one place, right? Because the only constant in life is change. I do really encourage people, whether they're reporting to me right now, whether they are working with me, to always learn. Because if you are stagnant, then your value is not going to improve. So if you look at the president and the CEOs of Petronas, right, many of them started as an engineer. At one point in their career, they move into a general management, right, where it's not so much about solving a technical problem anymore. It's really about driving the company ahead, having the right strategy, shaping the right culture so that you can execute the strategy, to inspire the people, right, to get the best out of the people. So there you go, guys. a story about someone who studied engineering but never really practiced engineering for a long time. Instead, use the learning, the knowledge from his engineering degree to use in a different field or different application. Obviously, you have to chart your own career path, your own journey. This is my journey and I'm sharing it with you, hoping that you can draw some learning from it. It is something that you have to discover and find out by yourself, that is for sure. But in whatever you do, please remember, choose a job that you love and you never have to work for one single day. So guys, take care, be safe, stay safe, and all the best. Assalamualaikum.